We're in Winnipeg, and this is the Manitoba Legislative Building, where provincial laws are passed. At first glance, it might look like any other Parliament building in Canada, with its neoclassical design, limestone construction, and pristine lawns. But there's nothing ordinary about this place. Take a closer look, and you'll find some features that are downright bizarre. Egyptian sphinxes, Greek gods, the Ark of the Covenant, and a golden boy. Some say they're clues hidden in plain sight, hints that this building is connected to a secretive order. But is it really a Da Vinci Code on the prairies? Or just eclectic design? Well, we're here to get to the bottom of it. We'll explore this place room by room to find out why Winnipeg is home to the grandest and most mysterious Parliament building in the country. This is Canadiana.
An illustrated map of Canada zooms out. Title, Canadiana, Winnipeg's Secret Code. A montage shows a vintage map blended with Old Town photos.
1911. Winnipeg was in the midst of a population boom, making it the third largest city in the country. It hadn't been long since the province and its capital had been at the center of one of Canada's most pivotal conflicts, the Red River Rebellion. The fight for sovereignty and Métis rights, led by the famous Louis Riel, had forged the province through blood and fire. It had been 40 years since the province was founded, 30 years since the Canadian Pacific Railway arrived, and 25 years since Louis Riel was hanged. Manitoba and Winnipeg were looking to forge a new identity, and now was the perfect time.
Host Adam Bunch.
We're at the Forks, the intersection between the Red and Assiniboine rivers, both of which stretch off for hundreds of kilometers. This junction is the reason Winnipeg's here in the first place, and the city's strategic location, not just on these rivers, but also very near the center of the country, made it a natural focus for the expansion of the transcontinental railways. Winnipeg was their primary hub, a gateway for commerce coming and going in every direction. It was literally impossible to pass through the country without stopping in Winnipeg. It was the center of North American trade, and the city was becoming quite wealthy as a result. Government officials were ready to capitalize on exciting new construction projects. They welcomed Bankers Row and Canada's first civic art gallery, and they wanted Winnipeg to have a brand new legislative building that reflected the world-class city it was becoming. But not just any legislative building. This one was going to be a palace, a lavishly decorated monument to a land of plenty, harkening back to the city's origins.
The legislative building features massive columns supporting a triangle pediment. Inside, two large bronze bison statues flank a staircase.
This is exactly the kind of decorative symbolism you'd expect to find in Manitoba's legislature. These two enormous bronze bison weigh 2.5 tons each, so heavy that legend has it they had to be slid in through the front door on ice, carved from the Assiniboine River, so they didn't scratch the shiny new marble floors. But this is where the building's decor stops representing the obvious symbols of Manitoba and starts getting a little mysterious. This is where our investigation begins. For example, up there, overlooking the bison, is the head of Medusa, the Greek monster, the woman with snakes instead of hair, who turns any man who gazes upon her into stone.
The face is extremely ornate.
Across the room, right above me, is Athena, goddess of war. And all around me right now, from the length of the bison to the number of stairs to the dimensions of the room, are mathematical motifs that reflect the ritualistic practices of a secretive order, the Freemasons.
A hand-drawn logo appears on screen.
If the word Freemasons conjures images of bizarre rituals, mysticism, and occult worship, that's partially because most people outside the Brotherhood don't really understand it. Freemasonry grew out of medieval stonemasons guilds, similar to modern unions, which set wages, trained members, and regulated their practice. Masons in medieval Europe studied measurement, geometry, and mathematics, as well as bricklaying. The path from apprentice to master was marked by ritual, and to elevate their trade, they made up stories about the guild having its roots in ancient Egypt. Freemasons have laid a cornerstone in many great historical buildings around the world. The city of Washington was practically founded by Freemasons. Back in the day, most Masons and architects were members of the Fraternal Society.
Adam stands on the grand staircase.
And this building is full of allegory that can be traced back to the principles of Freemasonry. Above us, on the roof, are Egyptian sphinxes inscribed with the words, "To the firm and everlasting manifestation of the sun god Ra, do your work." It's a clever nod to the Egyptian origins of Freemasonry under the guise of a fertility symbol, a sun god who warms the land that produces the crop. And Medusa? Well, she's an icon of protection. In fact, the name Medusa comes from a Greek word for protectress, and symbols of protection are common in Freemasonry, derived from the traditions of ancient temples where these lion heads and cattle skulls would have been venerated for their ability to ward off evil spirits. The symbolism of this entire room, including the bison, is dedicated to protection. Even Athena, goddess of war, is also a protector of cities.
Adam outstretches his arms.
This is a staircase of fine Italian marble, framed by rails of fossil-marked stone. The stairs come in flights of 13, and that's not by chance, because this room and many of the details throughout the building are said to have been designed with very specific quantities and measurements. The bison are each 13 feet long. There are 13 lights in each hallway. These lamps have 13 bulbs. This doorway has 13 decorative circles. The press gallery has 13 seats. Other numbers, like 2, 3, 5, and 8, are also repeated throughout, and they all have one thing in common. They're all part of the Fibonacci sequence in mathematics, an important principle of sacred geometry, practiced by the orders of Freemasonry.
Adam turns and walks up the stairs.
This is the rotunda. We're now directly beneath the dome. The entire floor is a geometric wheel encircled by a Greek key motif with a central balustrade, 13 feet across, said in its shape and dimensions to resemble the altars of underworld deities. And gazing down through the balustrade reveals a mystical underworld, the pool of the Black Star. It has 8 points and measures exactly 13 feet across. This symbol might represent the blazing star at the center of the Masonic Lodge.
Adam walks down a hall.
And the Masonic connection isn't just some far-fetched conspiracy theory. It's an idea supported by a local architectural historian who's authorized to give regular guided tours of the legislature. And it's even more plausible when you learn that the architect who designed this building was a confirmed member of the society. So, who was the mastermind behind this arcane design? Back in 1911, the city called a competition. 67 plans were submitted and narrowed down to a single winner, the firm of Frank Worthington Simon. Simon was a renowned British architect working in the arts and crafts style. He studied at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris and had previously been chosen by Queen Victoria to remodel Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Simon's generous use of allegory and mathematical design were both informed by his deep respect for the philosophical principles of Freemasonry. He was obsessed with quality and perfection, and with designing buildings that would stand tall for generations and generations of people to admire. It seemed that he could have anything he wished for: allegorical sculptures by esteemed sculptors, French plastering, the finest Carrara marble, murals by distinguished artists, even Egyptian sphinxes engraved with hieroglyphics. Of course, the costs of the design began to escalate, but the city of Winnipeg wanted it all. and they were prepared to spare no expense. Or so they thought. The construction was about to be plagued by a series of misfortunes that would shake Winnipeg to its core. This wasn't exactly the new era of peace and prosperity they'd been hoping for.
Archival footage of soldiers marching.
This war mural by the artist Frank Brangwyn hangs above the entrance to the Legislative Chamber, a reminder of the hardships suffered by the people of Manitoba when the First World War stole their men and shattered their booming economy. In 1914, the government announced that all public works projects would be shut down indefinitely to conserve resources for the war, and construction on the legislature slowed to a crawl. Little did they know there was another big problem looming for the city of Winnipeg, one that few had predicted: the Panama Canal. Completed in 1914, it opened up a new trade route to the west. Thanks to the canal, Pacific ports were now 8,000 kilometers closer to Europe than they were before. Great for Vancouver, not so great for Winnipeg. Winnipeg's boom was officially over. On top of the war, the canal, and the economic recession, there was also enormous public discontent at the government's spending on this rather extravagant building. And it was later revealed that the Conservative government had been colluding with a contractor to embezzle hundreds of thousands, close to 20 million in today's money. The scandal was so huge, it forced the Conservatives to resign, resulting in even further delays. Then, a year before the building's completion, came one final setback: the legendary Winnipeg General Strike.
A montage of black and white archival photos.
Thanks to the post-war recession, appalling labor conditions, and continued public resentment of the government's misspending of tax dollars, 35,000 Winnipeggers walked off the job in May 1919. There were countless arrests, deportations, violence, even deaths before the strike finally ended. An event so massive it triggered a wave of unionism across Canada. Manitoba's elaborate new legislative building could not have been built at a worse time. But they persevered. 7 years and $9 million later, Winnipeg's new legislative building was finally ready to open. And despite the years of setbacks, the vision of its originators held true. A building not for present delight, nor for use alone, but such as our descendants will thank us for. And the most beautiful piece of design was placed outside for all to see.
An exterior view of the domed roof.
At the very top of the dome of the legislature stands the Golden Boy. He looks hopefully toward the north, in the direction of the province's plentiful natural resources. The gold-plated messenger has become one of the best-known symbols of Manitoba. He can be seen from kilometers away. He came a very long way to get here, and he nearly didn't make it.
Close-ups of the statue.
The Golden Boy would be the angel at the top of the tree. Simon commissioned the statue from Charles Gardet, a renowned sculptor who was creating it at the Barbidienne foundry in Paris. Disaster struck when the foundry was devastated by German bombs.
An animation of a statue crumbling.
Miraculously, the Golden Boy was the only statue to emerge unharmed, but his troubles weren't over.
Black and white photos of the harbor.
He was stowed on a ship bound for America. But the ship was commandeered by American troops, so the Golden Boy lay forgotten in the hold for 2 years as the ship crisscrossed the Atlantic, dodging U-boats and German destroyers. But again, miraculously, he survived.
Adam stands in front of the building.
The journey of the Golden Boy is a perfect allegory for the hopes and dreams of a young Winnipeg, and today it's a testament to a city and to a province that have lived through triumphs and hardships and remained strong The city of Winnipeg emerged with one of the most impressive public buildings in North America. And while the theory of an ancient Masonic code has inspired books, media buzz, and an influx of tourists, it's far from the only interesting history you'll find here. In the end, it doesn't really matter whether the icons are Masonic or not, because the Manitoba Legislative Building itself is a much greater symbol than that. Through rebellion and railroads, prosperity and recession, promises and scandal, peace, war, and a Panama Canal, Winnipeg is still standing proud. This legislature is a legacy in stone, a monument to that history and to this city's resilient spirit.
A close-up of the statue that stands proudly atop the building. Title: Canadiana. Created by Kyle Kuko, Ashley Brooke, Adam Bunch, and Joseph Beebe. Credits on screen.
So, I'm now standing in the Legislative Reading Room, which is inside the Legislative Building. It's the oldest library anywhere in Manitoba, and the roots of this collection go back even further than that. Some of its books are very old, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. But first, I'd like to thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more incredible stories about the history of Canada, please click subscribe. We have many more stories to tell, but this is the very last episode that we're shooting with the money that we were generously given from Bell Fund. So, to tell more stories, we're going to need your help. You can become a patron on Patreon to give us a monthly donation. You can also give us a one-time donation on PayPal. You can follow us on social media and help spread the word. We're at This Is Canadiana. Now, back to the story of this place. As I said, it's the oldest library in Manitoba. It was founded by the province's very first lieutenant governor. And to get things started, he managed to get his hands on one of the oldest collections of books around, at least in these parts. He heard that a private citizen had the remnants of a collection that went all the way back to 1812, to the beginning of the Red River settlement, which was the colony that was the precursor to Winnipeg. The guy who founded that colony, Lord Selkirk, sent the settlers a few books that he thought might be helpful. And over the next few decades, that library grew to more than 2,500 volumes, an impressive collection. But by the end of the 1800s, it had been broken up and dispersed, so there were just a couple hundred left. And those books were the ones that the lieutenant governor used to help start the collection that is now the official legislative collection for the province of Manitoba. I'm Adam Bunch, and we'll see you next time on Canadiana.